It's Friday night. It's the preview show. It's the No Nay Never podcast.
Hello and welcome to the preview show brought to you by the No Nay Never podcast. I'm your host Natalie Bromley, but joining me as ever is the headliner himself, the absolute superstar of the preview show, and that is Dave Statman Roberts. Dave, welcome back.
Hello, Natalie. It's good to be back. It's been a little while, hasn't it?
It has. I was starting to really miss you. But then similarly, it also feels like just 2 minutes ago when we were talking, this last 3 weeks has gone very, very quickly. I kind of thought that we were playing the week after Easter, not Easter Sunday. But it's good to be back. How has the international break treated you, young Dave?
Well, it's been a little bit of a rest, and obviously there's been no football to watch other than the internationals. We've had Nick Pope's done well for England. They've won again tonight. We're recording this on Wednesday. We'll give that away. But England have scraped through, got a 2-1 win, but that's the job done. 3 wins out of 3.
And of course, our goalkeeper is now an international record holder, Dave.
Yes, 6 games without conceding. I'm not sure if you can count it as a clean sheet if he's not played the full game, but certainly in his first 6 internationals, he kept goals out in all games. I think he played half of one game and he came on in the 65th minute, so he played 431 minutes and didn't concede a goal, but he has conceded one now. But job done tonight. I think it'll be interesting to see what happens if Jordan Pickford's back fit for the next internationals and who Gareth picks.
Yeah, definitely. We'll see what happens. I mean, it's a funny one, isn't it? There does seem to be some resistance to putting Nick Pope in as number one goalkeeper, but let's see how that unfolds. Well, we've got loads to catch up on because it's our first, our first podcast back for 3 weeks. So let's delve straight in there and let's get our listeners going. And of course, we've got a quiz answer to give away, which, Dave, you've made our listeners wait 3 weeks for this answer. I can hardly remember what you asked, but let's try and give it a refresher. So, at the end of the Everton preview show back in 1954, which does seem like an eternity ago, Dave, you're quite right, we asked you, no Burnley player has been sent off in the 129 Premier League games staged at Turf Moor since 2009. But can you name the last Burnley player to be sent off at Turf Moor in any competition? Gosh, Dave, what was the answer? Who submitted it? Tell us all about the quiz question.
Well, I think before I give the correct answer, I'm going to, firstly, apologies to anyone who's waited till now for the quiz answer. I think Matt was keen on Twitter to give the answer. I thought, well, no, we'll keep it for our preview show listeners,
yes.
Our select bunch who listen here. And it did seem to be one of our more popular quiz questions, judging by all the wrong answers we had. I'm going to read out all the wrong answers. So, deep breath. It was not Ashley Barnes, Michael Duff, Ben Mee, Jeff Hendrick, Kevin Ball, Adi Akinbaye, Joey Barton, Stephen Defoe, Dean Marnie, Stephen Thompson, Stephen Jordan, Danny Fox, Robbie Brady, Kieran Trippier, Stephen Caldwell, Kyle Lafferty, Kevin McDonald, Ben Gibson, Jason Shackle, or Eric Peters.
My goodness, it wasn't any of those.
It wasn't any of those.
Well, do we have any players left?
The correct answer was Keith Tracy. He was sent off against late on in the game against West Ham United. He conceded a penalty and was sent off, and that was in the Capital One Cup way, way, way back in October 2013.
Gosh, that is a sight for sore eyes, because I do have a graphic next to me giving me that answer, and I'd forgotten about Keith Tracy playing for us. Not that successful a career at Burnley, I don't think. But, okay, we obviously got quite a lot of wrong answers, Dave, but did we get any right ones?
We did get some that were right. Of the people who knew that it was Keith Tracy, we had Callum Woodhead, Adam Crawshaw, Paul Jackson, Andrew Porter, John Robertson and Joe Pattison. And also, there was one other rather interesting answer from 1882 RC on Twitter, who suggested Burnley FC mascot Bertie B. You may remember he was sent off for taking off a pair of imaginary glasses against QPR. There was some decision with the linesman, and he flagged, and Bertie B kind of pretended to hand him a pair of glasses. The referee sent him off, and he ended up in the cells, if you remember the picture being tweeted out. But interestingly,
I do remember. That was hilarious.
Interestingly, that game was only a matter of 3 days before Keith Tracy picked up his red card, so I thought it deserved a mention for Bertie B. Obviously, it wasn't the correct answer, but worth a notable answer.
Definitely a notable answer. And I'd genuinely forgotten all about that, and that was just a really funny part of banter. So I'm very, very happy that you brought that up, Dave. That's good remembrance. I do remember they took him down to Burnley, Nick, didn't they? And Bertie B was in there with his. Yeah, that was hilarious times. Well, of course,
it's actually at the stadium. There's a cell at the stadium.
What?
They have a cell at Turf Moor. I'm not sure where in the stadium it is, but the cell is actually in the ground.
Are you winding me up? Is that a joke?
No, it's serious. That's what it is. Yeah.
Oh my God! I'm going to Google that. I don't believe that. That's hilarious. If that turns out to be a cruel joke, Dave, you're going to be off my Christmas card list.
No, you have to tweet Chris Gibson, because he tweeted the picture. I think he didn't realise that he's tweeted it from the club account rather than his personal account, but it went in all the national newspapers and local press and everything. But yes, it was a cell at Turf Moor. They have a cell in there for wrongdoers.
I'm literally tweeting him right now, this very question, because I don't believe you, and I'm quite convinced that you're actually winding me up here. It's a cruel joke. Well, of course, there is going to be another one of our popular quiz questions at the end of the show, so do stay tuned. And the good news is that you're only going to need to wait a week for the answer, because, of course, we're going to be back next week.
Opposition stats!
Right, let's move on to previewing the show. And, of course, we actually have a football match to cover. It is Southampton away, Easter Sunday, the 4th of April, at 12 p.m, which is live on Sky Sports. Now, Dave, why don't you kick us off with a recent history about this fixture?
Burnley have visited Southampton on 7 occasions since our first promotion to the Premier League in 2009, as well as a championship match in February 2012 and an eventful FA Cup tie in January 2014. Our 5 most recent visits have all been in the Premier League. All of these recent matches took place at St Mary's Stadium, which is where the Saints moved to in 2001 after they left the Dell. After a 2-0 defeat in the championship match we mentioned, as well as a 4-3 defeat in the FA Cup tie, Burnley also lost the first 2 Premier League away trips to play Southampton, but we've won 2 and drawn once on our 3 most recent visits. The 2 recent wins represent exactly half of our all-time away league wins at Southampton, with 4 in total in the 28 seasons we've been in the same division. We've also had 1 League Cup victory there in the 1960s. Each of the 2 recent away wins will be covered in more detail for our featured highlight and hero for this week's episode, which brings us neatly onto the next section.
Highlights and lowlights.
That it does, and we've obviously got them in the right order this week. We've got the highlight and the lowlight. So what is that highlight, Dave?
Well, our highlight this week is also our most recent away win against the Saints, which took place just over 12 months ago, in what seems like a very different pre-COVID world. It was actually a game that took place in February 2020. To refresh your memory, it was a wet and windy day, with Storm Dennis slashing the south coast. That may have contributed to the first goal, when Ashley Westwood gave Burnley an early lead, scoring directly from an in-swinging corner after just 90 seconds, when the ball was left at the near post by Danny Ings and went in past goalkeeper Alex McCarthy. Danny Ings made amends by firing in an equaliser past Nick Pope from the edge of the box after 18 minutes, but it was left to substitute Matej Vidra to score the goal of the game on the hour to ensure that Burnley travel back up north with all 3 points.
Mate. What's the lowlight then, Dave? What have you chosen to make us all sad?
Well, our lowlight this week was one of the 2 Premier League defeats we mentioned, and it was a loss by a 3-1 scoreline at St Mary's in October 2016. It started off reasonably well with a goalless first half, but in the second half, the home side raced into a 3-goal lead. Former Claret striker Charlie Austin scored 2 of Southampton's 3 goals, including a penalty, and Nathan Redmond scored the other one. Despite Sam Vokes pulling a goal back with a rare Premier League penalty, it was to no avail, and all the hard work of the first 45 minutes was undone in the second 45, and we came away pointless.
Boo.
Fixture flashback.
Well, moving on then to the first of our new features for the second half of the season, and it is our fixture flashback feature, which is your chance, listeners, to get involved on the preview show. Now, we're not going to lie, listeners, we've been a little bit disappointed with uptake on this. You seem to be a bit shy, you lot, so don't be. Get involved. And we haven't really got a memory this week for the Southampton game, but Dave, how did they get involved? Because we've got the United game coming up, so let's see what happens. You know, how are we going to tell our listeners to actually get involved?
Well, the next time we play, as you said, will be away to Manchester United. And right now, I'm struggling to think of too many memorable games at Old Trafford. Can you think of any, Natalie?
Just a few, Dave. Yeah. I think there's going to be plenty.
So perhaps that'd be a good opportunity for our listeners to get in touch with their memories. So if you can think of any match in particular from the last few seasons or longer ago even, do help us out for our next preview show. And if you want to share your contribution, you can send us an email, podcast@nonamenever.net, with either a written submission or preferably an audio recording, because we like those. We've mentioned it before, but the easiest website to use to make a recording, if you don't want to do it yourself on your PC or device and save a recording, there's actually a handy website that allows you to do it all, and just send us a link. It's really, really easy. And the website is vocaroo.com, VOCAROO.com, and it's free to use, no registration, and it's really, really simple.
Excellent. Well, we've actually just assumed that we didn't get any listener memories this week, Dave, but of course we are recording this slightly early because we want to try and get it out before the Easter break. So listeners, you may very well hear very shortly somebody who submitted a memory, in which case, enjoy. If not, then you know how to do it for next time.
Hi everyone, George here. Southampton away, my main memory is definitely the 2017 game when we went there, and it was November, so it was fairly early on in the season, and the game was just petering out to a bit of a boring 0-0. You've travelled all the way down there on a Naki Clarets coach, 6-hour plus journey just to go there for a 0-0, and you're thinking, oh no, we've been here, done this before. You know, the boring southern away games where you just nab a draw and come back home. But instead, final 10 minutes come around, and the one and only Sam Vokes pops up with a header. I'm pretty sure he glanced on the header into the bottom corner. It was right in front of the away fans as well. Absolute ecstasy in the stands amongst the away following. Absolutely brilliant. And more than just being a normal 1-0 win away at Southampton, it really kicked off what was to be our European season. And I remember that is the game where everyone around us sort of started to think, hold up, something's happening here. We were flying high in the table, you know, getting. I think we were definitely inside the top 6 at the time, and it was getting towards December, and you're thinking something special is happening here. Now, obviously, afterwards we'd play Stoke at home during December and win and go 4th, which was monumental. But the Southampton away game was very special and a good memory to look back on, because it's the first time that I remember us singing "We're all going on a European tour," and from there onwards the season just sort of spiraled a bit, and obviously we ended up coming 7th in what was probably one of the best seasons we'll ever have as Burnley fans. So yeah, Southampton away 2017, a Sam Vokes glancing header, and the start of a dream, really. Yeah, the start of a dream that would eventually pay off. And we ended up going to Europe. Fingers crossed we can do it sometime soon. But that's my abiding memory of Southampton away.
Heroes and villains.
So, my favourite section of the preview show, Dave, heroes and villains. Who have you picked as our hero, please?
Well, we've already mentioned one of our 2 Premier League away wins against Southampton as this week's highlight. So we selected our hero as the player who scored the only goal in our other recent away win, which was by a narrow 1-0 scoreline at St Mary's in November 2017. In case you don't remember who it was, let me refresh your memory.
I know.
I know. I know. We've already had this player as a hero in one of our other preview shows earlier in the season, but I make no apology for awarding him this accolade again for a piece of magic against his hometown team. Super sub Sam Vokes came off the bench to head in Johan Berg Gudmundsson's cross and score an 81st minute header to seal the victory. It wasn't a close range effort by any means, with the ball arriving near to the penalty spot and then being expertly directed between Fraser Forster and his left-hand post. Hopefully, you'll agree that this winning goal is worthy of us making Sam Vokes our hero for this week.
Well, quite frankly, Dave, I would find an excuse to make Sam Vokes a hero every week, so he's certainly a worthy winner for me. And I get a nice little picture to look at, so happy days. And a note, listeners, with a great big red thing saying no spoilers, please, because I tend to get a little bit giddy when I see pictures of Sam Vokes. So there you go. Now, I don't know who this is because I didn't check ahead the script beforehand, so this is as much a surprise to me as it is to our listeners. Who's our villain? I love the villain section.
Well, it's probably fair to say there have been one or two controversial selections for villains so far this season.
Oh, no, you're going rogue again.
They have. Some of the more surprising recipients of this accolade have been Roy Hodgson, Sir Marcus Rashford, and Sir Geoff Hurst. But we can now add to that list with this week's villain, who is none other than Danny Ings.
Whoa. Dave Statman Roberts, that might be the final straw. What on earth are you playing at, sir?
Let me explain. He scored the equaliser in the corresponding fixture last season, as well as netting the winner in the match which took place between the two teams at Turf Moor towards the start of this season. He's even been linked recently with a summer move to Manchester City, although the thought of him spearheading a City attack against us at the Etihad next season is not one we really want to contemplate, considering our poor record there. Anyway, if he does play this weekend, which is by no means a certainty, as he's been recovering from an injury, we'll be hoping he doesn't make it a hat-trick of goals against us. But for his scoring exploits, Danny Ings is our villain for this week.
Oh, I tell you, I'm going to have to start putting some warnings on you, I'm afraid. There's been some controversial choices for that award, but we're not dragging Danny Ings into that. We're not. You're going to be giving it to Sam Vokes at some point, and that'll be it. I'll unplug you. You'll be off air. Who's the man in the middle then at the weekend, Dave? Who's going to be refereeing us?
Well, the referee for the Easter Sunday game at St Mary's is Birmingham's Andre Mariner. This will be his third appointment as a referee for a Burnley game so far this season. He was in the middle at Turf Moor last month. That was for our 1-1 draw with Arsenal. And unusually, he was also the referee for the reverse fixture against Southampton. That was when the Saints came to Turf Moor in September and came away with a narrow win with that fourth-minute goal by Danny Ings. The draw against Arsenal ended a run of 6 consecutive Burnley defeats in games refereed by Andre Mariner, so we'll be hoping we can go one better and earn a victory this Sunday. There was a time many years ago when it was standard practice for referees to be in charge for both fixtures between teams, but it isn't something that tends to happen very often in the modern era. John Moss has been given the responsibility of watching the replays at Stockley Park, as he is the video assistant referee for this fixture.
Brilliant. Excellent. Two of my favourite referees. I can't wait for that one.
Statman Dave's Stat of the Week.
Well, let's not leave it there, Dave, because I know that you like to spoil our listeners, and you're not just going to give them any old stat. You're going to delve straight into deep into the bank of Statman Dave. Is that the right expression? I think it is. And give our listeners your miscellaneous stat of the week.
Well, this week's stat relates to this weekend's match, which will be just the second time that Burnley have played a competitive match on Easter Sunday. The only previous occasion was a 0-0 draw against Spurs. That was a game that took place at Turf Moor on the 5th of April 2015. On the subject of Sunday games, it'll also be Burnley's 50th Premier League game to take place on a Sunday. In fact, with fixture changes, all 4 of our games in April are now scheduled to be Sunday kickoffs, which is also a first. Our previous 49 Premier League Sunday games have only produced 9 wins, with 10 draws and 30 defeats, and that win percentage of just 18.4% for games played on a Sunday is way down on the win percentage of 28.8% for all of our Premier League games to date. So the basis of that is we don't tend to do as well when we play on a Sunday.
Great, excellent. That bodes well for the running, doesn't it, Dave? Well, before we have a quick look at the game ourselves, we did manage to get you an opposition view this week, and we spoke to Ben from the Total Saints podcast to get his view ahead of the fixture.
Opposition view.
All in all, it's been a typical rollercoaster of a Saints season, to be honest. The first half was really, really good. We got to the top of the league in November and I think had targets of trying to get into Europe and finishing well. Since then, we've been on a dreadful run. We've lost 10 out of 12 in the Premier League, and alongside injuries, a few dodgy VAR decisions, a loss of momentum and confidence within the team, it's meant that we're now looking over our shoulders and keeping our fingers crossed that Fulham don't win too many games. But generally, there's been progress made. I think we've seen a few youngsters come through this season, the likes of Nathan Teller, and that gives us optimism for the years to come. But I think Saints ultimately probably going to finish in the bottom half now, which when you think of where we were after that game against Newcastle back in November is slightly disappointing. The key thing is obviously making sure they keep themselves in the Premier League because that's very important for the sustainable model that we tend to follow. In terms of getting to Wembley, I think it's been a great achievement. We've not conceded a goal yet in the FA Cup. We've beaten the holders Arsenal and Wolves along the way. We recently won against Bournemouth and have got a tricky game against Leicester in the semi-final, but we've done well to avoid Manchester City, which gives us a chance of making the FA Cup final. I think if you're a Saints fan and someone offered you before the season that you'd be 14th and in a semi-final with about 90 games to go in the season, we probably would have taken that. We're never going to win the Premier League, so I think ultimately having the opportunity to fight for a cup position is always something to be treasured. The Saints have done fairly well in the last few years to get to Wembley. Hopefully they can get one step further in terms of actually getting to the final of the FA Cup this time. The Burnley fixture is always a tough one for Saints. I think Saints appreciate, certainly fans do, that it's going to be a physical and tough battle. We haven't done that well against Burnley at home over the last few years. I think we know how Burnley will come, that they'll sit deep and try and frustrate and be physical, and Saints will need to be up for that. I think if they don't match Burnley's work rate and their effort, then they're going to be in for a shock. Obviously, it's just off the back of the international break as well, so getting up to speed. Players that have been travelling for international duty may not be available for the game as well. So it's certainly a tough baptism for Saints back into action in the Premier League. But ultimately, we need to get over the line now. We need probably another at least 4 or 5 points. I think Saints will see this as a winnable game, but I think Burnley absolutely will as well. So probably going to be quite a tight affair. Can see it going either way, but absolutely Saints are going to need to be up for the battle. From a predicted lineup point of view, I think Saints, assuming everyone is fit and as I mentioned, has come back from international duty without any knocks or niggles, I think the lineup will be Fraser Forster, Kyle Walker-Peters, Jan Bednarek, Yannick Vestergaard and Ryan Bertrand at the back. James Ward-Prowse and Ibrahima Diallo will probably play in centre midfield. I think on the wings he'll have Stuart Armstrong and Nathan Redmond. Redmond obviously put in a fantastic performance down at Bournemouth a couple of weeks ago. And then up front, it looks like Danny Ings could be fit again, so if he is, I imagine he will play alongside Shea Adams. So the side that has predominantly played most of this season should be available for that game. As I said, I think in terms of a prediction, I'm always pretty bad with my predictions, to be honest. So I think it'll be a tough physical proposition. Given the international break and the fact it's going to take the team a little while to get up to speed, I'm going to sit on the fence and go for a 1-1 draw that probably won't hurt either side.
So, I don't really know where we're up to. I feel like coming into this fixture, Jalen, before the break, Clarence were kind of riding high. It looks like we've sealed another season in the Premier League. And in some respects, I was kind of sad to have the international break because it felt like we needed to maintain that momentum. But 3 weeks down, a few results, some really good results to get us, back in survival contention and a good chance for all of our players to get fit again. I'm feeling quite confident going into the weekend, even though Southampton are a relatively strong side. How are you feeling?
I think it's well, we know away games are always tough. We'll have that as a caveat. We say that every time. Southampton started off reasonably well. They've not done as well recently, I don't think. So that's an opportunity. It's been a chance to get players back fit again. We know that we had a good result against Everton, a good win, which took us up to 33 points. We had that 7-point gap between ourselves and Fulham, who were leading the way among the bottom three. we know that Jack Cork and Charlie Taylor have both been in training this week, which is the good news. The bad news is that Robbie Brady came off injured. He played in a friendly for the Republic of Ireland against Qatar, so he came off after 20 minutes, so we don't know what the extent of that injury is, but that's not looking too promising. But I think the rest of the side are fairly okay. They should be rested after 3 weeks, so they've been fairly careful with their training regime, I think, over that time. And then Burnley can hopefully go and get another good result. We've had a decent record last 2 or 3 times we've been down to St Mary's. We've had 2 wins and a draw, so there's no reason why we can't go there and get another good result.
That's very true. So even though there's no reason to suspect that we won't do, Dave, what's your gut telling you? Do you think we will take advantage of that and actually do it? What are you thinking?
I think it'll be cagey, and if I was be pushed for a prediction, which I know you're going to push me for a prediction, I'm going to sit on the fence and go for a 1-1 draw.
Of course you are, which is Dave's code in the preview show for saying he thinks we're going to get beat. He can never quite bring himself, unless we're playing City away.
I think it's going to be a draw.
Yeah, okay. Unless it's City away, you never ever predict a loss, but you always just predict a draw. But I'm feeling confident, and I think everything's going to go to plan. I'm going to say we're going to win 2-1 to Clarets. Who do you think's going to score, Dave? Is it going to be a score draw and a 0-0?
1-1, I said in terms of the score.
So who have you got scoring for Burnley?
I think maybe Josh Brownhill.
Oh, good choice. And header, left foot, right foot, backside. How's it going to go in?
Right foot.
Excellent. Well, I'm going to go
from outside the box.
Oh, a free kick then. Set piece.
No, not a free kick.
No, just a screamer from outside the box.
We never score free kicks.
Okay. Well, I'm going to say it's going to be 2-1 to Burnley, and I'm going to have my scorers as Chris Wood and Ben Mee. There we go. And Ben Mee is going to be a header from the corner, and Chris Wood's just going to be a Chris Wood special. So that's going to be amazing. Well, listeners, obviously we want to know how what you think your score prediction is going to be. So please do tweet us, email us, get in touch and tell us what the score will be, who's going to score and how they're going to score it. You can tweet us at NoNayNever, or you can email us at podcast@nonaynever.net.
Fantasy Premier League update.
So, Dave, we must have an almighty Fantasy Premier League update to give our listeners, because it has been a while. We must have loads to catch up on. What's been going on in the NoNayNever Fantasy Premier League?
Well, yeah, we do have an update. Last time we provided an update, that was going back to, I think we did game week 26 and 27. So since then, we're in the middle of game week 28. And then since then, we've also had the rather odd game week 29, where there are only 4 matches taking place. So there has been quite a bit of movement, quite a bit of change going on, and we do have quite a lot to update. So starting off, we do have an update on our top 5 in the NoNayNever Fantasy Premier League, which I'll give you in reverse order. We have got Chris Stanworth in 5th place on 1,879 points. Gary Proctor in 4th on 1,882. Adam Dennett is in 3rd place on 1,901. Sean Danaher, who we've had as a guest on the show earlier in the season, he's still up there, just 5 points off the lead. He's in 2nd place on 1,909. And our leader still, who's been there for quite a while, although the gap has closed a little bit, is Charlie Binns, who's up there in 1st place on 1,914 points.
Well done, those top 5 managers. This is getting to the nitty-gritty now. Was there, 9 games left?
We're in the home straight.
Yeah, we're going to start crowning a winner. What about Team NoNayNever, Dave? How are we all doing?
You're doing, well, okay. You're 223rd. I think that's up 1 or 2 places since we last did an update. You're now on 1,249 points. I went up again. I had a decent week with the odd game week because I used one of my free hits. I used the one where you could make unlimited transfers for a week and then it reverts back. So I brought in lots of Brighton players and Tottenham players and got more points that way. I'm up to, as I say, 128th position on 1,582 points. And the leader in our podcasters mini league is still Richard Steele. He's in 74th position with 1,670 points. He's been there way ahead of most of us for pretty much all the season.
I was going to say, I don't remember him not being the leader, to be honest. I think he's been up there all season. The swine. I'm just looking at this now. I think do I remember rightly before the Everton game? Was that the game that you sent me a text saying, I don't think you're going to do very well with your fantasy football league this week?
That was the one, yeah. And you didn't do, other than having Patrick Bamford, you didn't do very well because most of your players were either injured or weren't actually playing a game.
I think I remember you sending me a screenshot and going, have you looked at this? And I was like, no.
No.
And there's literally every single one of my players had one of those either a red or a yellow, like a red triangle or an exclamation mark next to them. Oh, in fact, I'm looking at them now and they still do the same. I'm going to do it straight after this game. But that's okay. 230 something for me. I think that's probably the best I've done, so I'm pretty happy with that. What about Kings of Game Weeks 28 and 29 then, please, Dave?
Right. Well, we had for game week 28, if you had all these 11 players without extra captain points, you would have got 127 points. We had in goal Melier of Leeds. We had a back four of Stones and Cancelo of Man City, Dunk of Brighton and Luke Shaw. A midfield four of Milivojevic, Trossard, McNeil, Dwight McNeil in there, the Burnley player in, and also Odegaard of Arsenal, and a front two of Iheanacho and Vardy. That was our 4-4-2 team for game week 28. And for game week 29, we had a slightly odd formation. We had a 3-5-2. And again, this was just based on the 4 matches, so it's a little bit different to normal, the fact that there weren't as many players available. But we had Sanchez of Brighton in goal. We had a back three of Veltman, Rodon and Anderson. We had a midfield 5 of Trossard, Lingard, Lucas Moura, Rafinha and Bowen. And our front two were Patrick Bamford and Alexander Lacazette. That was the Kings of Game Week 29. That would have got you 104 points if you'd have had all those players for Game Week 29.
Excellent. Well, the second of our new features for the second half of the season then is the opposition 3 to watch, where you identify 3 players from the other side who you think are going to cause us the most damage based on their Fantasy Premier points. So, who have we got this week, please? I think we can probably guess these, to be honest.
I was going to say, they're probably not going to be a surprise to people, these, but we've got the out-and-out leader amongst the Southampton players is James Ward-Prowse. He's got 126 points to date. Che Adams has had a good season. He's got 108. And our very own Danny Ings used to be a Burnley player not that long ago, as we know. 95 points. We'd expect certainly the top 2 of those to be in the starting 11 on Sunday, although Danny Ings may be touch and go. We know he has a knack of scoring goals against us, but he could still be a doubt with a muscle injury. I'd read that it was like 50%, and then they'd done an update and said he was maybe 75%, so he might be more likely than not to play, but we won't find out until 11 o'clock when they announce the teams on Sunday morning. Good
stuff. What are we doing for the next couple of weeks then, Dave? We're probably going to be able to give Premier League, Fantasy League updates for the next couple of weeks, aren't we? Looking at the fixtures.
Hopefully, yes. Certainly for next week we are. I've looked ahead at the fixtures. There's no issues to prevent us from providing a full update to our league table and the Kings of Game Week when we come to record our next preview show ahead of the visit to Old Trafford. It'll depend on the midweek games, because I think they've got to obviously shoehorn some extra fixtures in. If they do those and they're later in the week, depending on when we're recording, it may delay us. But we'll do our best with that and give our listeners whatever information we've got available at the time. But hopefully, with our games now being on Sundays and being regular each week, it should make it a little bit easier.
Excellent.
Statman Dave's quiz question.
Well, finally then, let's leave our listeners with some homework. Let's see if we can get the same engagement we had last week for that fantastic question last week. What are you going to set our listeners this week, please, Dave, for the quiz?
Well, this week's quiz question relates to our stat of the week and matches played on a Sunday. And what we want to know is, Which team did Burnley beat to register our first top flight win on a Sunday? Short and simple.
I think I know this. How do our listeners tell us, please? How do they submit their answers, correct or otherwise?
Well, get in touch with us. You can tweet us or send us a direct message, preferably on Twitter. That's at No Nay Never. You can email us podcast@nonaynever.net, or you can also reply to the post for this preview show on either the No Nay Never Facebook page or on YouTube, and we'll reveal the correct answer at the start of the next preview show. Not as long to wait for this one as there was for the last one, thankfully.
Absolutely. Good stuff. Well, finally then, do we have any community news or any other business that we need to share with our listeners, Dave?
Well, yeah, just a quick reminder, really. If you haven't listened yet, I spoke to Paul Weller during the international break, and we had a Paul Weller special episode. And depending on when you're listening to this preview show, there's still time to enter a competition to win his book. Simply find our tweet, which announced that the podcast was out, and then retweet it and reply with "Not Such a Bad Life," which is the name of Paul's book. We're going to give you until just before midnight on Easter Monday before we select a winner. If you're struggling for that, just if you search Twitter for hashtag "Not Such a Bad Life," or search back through the timeline we've got on No Nay Never, you'll find the tweet, and all you've got to do is retweet that and reply with hashtag "Not Such a Bad Life." And that's, as I say, we've got a copy of the book that Paul's put aside for us, and one lucky No Nay Never listener will be able to win that.
Good stuff. I haven't listened to it yet, and I'm desperate to. I've just been really tied up with work, but I'm hearing really good things. I think you did a really good job with Paul Weller. Your first experience in the hosting chair, Dave, how did you find it?
It was really good. I mean, Paul gave some really, really good answers. I mean, we videoed it as well, so it's the first time we've done a video one. So if you don't want to listen to the actual audio on the podcast, you can actually go to YouTube. You can watch the whole episode on there as well. But yeah, Paul came across really well, speaks really well, and gave us some real insight into his career at Burnley. And time since then, really. So it was a really, really good episode. I thought I learnt things from it. I'd learnt in the actual research I'd done prior to the interview, and also with Paul's answers as well. They came across really well. And I've also got the book as well. I'm working my way through I've got an advanced copy of the book, so I'm looking through that. It's really good.
Oh, good stuff. Well done. Yeah, he's a nice guy, is Paul, and I'm really looking forward to it. And I'll give it a listen before we speak. Fixture-wise, we've got all of the fixtures there, aren't we? Is there any? They're all now Sundays, aren't they? We've got Sunday, Saturday. So do keep an eye out on those, because I think there's been some fixture changes, hasn't there, Dave? Have these all been in? Oh, actually, no. The West Ham and Fulham games are yet to be confirmed, are they?
Yeah, the ones for April now have all been confirmed. They're all Sundays. We knew already, I think, obviously for this one and Newcastle, this week they'd announced as well the Man United and Wolves games have both moved to Sunday as well, leaving all 4 games on Sunday. They've not gone as far as the May ones yet. Obviously, West Ham would play the weekend, the start of May, and then Fulham away is the weekend after that. They've not announced the dates and times for those yet. They'll be probably a couple of weeks off, but we'll keep an eye out for those and mention those in a future show once we have confirmation.
Excellent. Thanks, Dave. Well, that's all we've got time for this week. My thanks, as ever, go to everybody who's contributed to making the preview show this week. To Ben from the Total Saints podcast for his opposition view. To Turf Moor Stadium announcer Dominic Walker for his specially recorded preview show announcements. To if we had a fixture flashback, whatever it's called, then well done you and thank you. To producer Matt for knitting all this together and out there. But my main thanks, of course, to Dave Roberts for just researching and doing everything that he does for the preview show. He puts an incredible amount of work into this, and do make sure you check out his Burnley Stats match database for just extra credits. Essentially, you get extra credit from us if you do your homework. Most of all, thanks to you, the listeners, for downloading and listening to this episode. Your support is very much appreciated, and we would not be here without you. The rest of the team will be back on probably Tuesday to look at analyse and look back on that fixture this weekend against Southampton. Hopefully be discussing a 3 points that gets us even closer to safety. And Dave now will be back next Friday night to look ahead for the next edition of the preview show. So do stick with us. 9 games to go. We're in the final stretch of the season. And once this is done, we're going to all have a well-deserved summer break. back to normality with social restrictions lifted, and we're going to be back at Turf Moor before you know it. I hope that you're all looking forward to, indeed, Dave's crossing his fingers at me. I do hope that you're all managing to just survive or cope through this extended lockdown. We're nearly there, guys. If anybody is struggling or feel like they want somebody to talk to, the Nona Never lines are always open. If you want to have a cup of tea and a natter about Burnley, or even write to us and set up a pen pal, you can do that. Or if you just want somebody to have a laugh with us, we are always there. Take care of yourselves, take care of your loved ones, and we will see you next time. I've been Natalie Bromley. He's been Dave Roberts. This has been the preview show brought to you by the Nona Never podcast. Until next time.